Hello, my name is Mark Taylor and welcome to the Education on Fire podcast. The place for creative and inspiring learning from around the world. Listen to teachers, parents and mentors share how they are supporting children to live their best authentic life and are proving to be a guiding light to us all. Hello and welcome back to the Education on Fire podcast. I hope you had a very Merry Christmas and got to spend it with as many loved ones as you possibly can, whatever your circumstances around the world here during this extraordinary end to 2020. Today it's just going to be me. This is going to be a roundup of our entire year, what we've achieved, what we've tried to do, a little bit of kind of where we are and most importantly a really big thank you to all of you that are listening week in, week out. The show has grown a lot over this year, which has been absolutely fantastic, and I'm really proud with the fact that with children at home being homeschooled, obviously because everything was closed down, and we've managed to keep the interviews going. We've been able to keep the podcast coming out. We've had people joining our email list. We've got a Facebook group which we've started, and just so many things which to be really grateful for, and I think that's the most important thing here for today, is just to be really grateful for so many things that have happened despite us being in the middle of a global pandemic, which is just the reality of where we are. But it's interesting to look at the positives and exactly what we've learnt from this incredible year. So we've got a few milestones I just wanted to talk about today. One of them being that we've now had downloads in 133 countries around the world. So when I now look at my map on the analytics of the show, almost the entire world is now showing up. It's just incredible to see how far we've reached and how many people across the globe are just really connecting with this idea of sort of child-centered learning, being able to have a personalized learning idea, a way of being able to bring creative and inspiring learning to as many people as possible, because it's that connection. It's the theme that's coming up more and more as we do more and more interviews of, person that got connected with another person, and it may be teacher student, it may be student, it might be teacher, it might just be something that you hear here which just kind of gets that spark going of what you want to achieve. And I think it's that community of feeling like we're on a journey together, which is supporting us all to do what we want, which of course is to educate children, to be able to give them the learning and the understanding that they need, and to be their best authentic selves, and to go out into the world and make the world a better place tomorrow based on what it is that we're able to share and impart and show and model here today. So this is episode 180, which means that we're not that far away from a big milestone of getting through our 200 podcasts here on Education on Fire. Of course, we did release 56 episodes on Learning on Fire, which you can find out via the Education on Fire website there. And also you will know that I produce a show for the National Association for Primary Education, who are the sponsor of this show, but also I am the vice chair of. And there's nearly 60 episodes on there as well. So we're really experienced now at producing some of these, and I think a combination of all of the things that we've managed to cover through all of those different 3 podcasts which I've been doing over the years since I first started back in the end of 2016 has just filled me with so much gratitude, and the people that I've met and the people I've connected with and the people that have supported me and the chance for me to be able to give back has just been incredible. And yeah, once again, thank you so much for everyone who's been involved. So in the next week or so, I'm expecting also to go through the milestone of 50,000 downloads. And that is something which I couldn't believe, like I said, when we started back in 2016. Just the fact that 50,000 people is so many people. I was just watching some football earlier today, and their crowds in a stadium which are holding sort of 40, 50, 60, 70,000 people. The thought of actually standing in the middle of that kind of place, having spoken to that many people over these years, is just absolutely extraordinary to me. And the fact that more and more people are listening in week and subscribing and sharing with their friends. And I thank you for everyone who is just sort of sharing what it is that we're doing here, because that's the way we've been able to grow. And that's the way we're actually being able to affect more and more people. And that's really, really what this is all about. So again, thank you very much, and I will let you know as soon as we pass that milestone, because we will need to have some kind of celebration, and I'm looking to be able to give a couple of things away to some people who might be interested. So do listen out over the next few weeks as we get to that point. And if you want to find out and be part of a regular conversation, do please join our Facebook group, where we continue these conversations, and you have a chance to sort of ask some questions and talk a little bit more about what we cover here on the podcast. And there's a link to that in the show notes of this episode. So that's educationonfire.com, and if you search for episode 180, that'll pop up for you, and and it'll give you the link there to be able to join. I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank Carol Aviard, who is the person who I run Primary Music on Fire membership site with. Now, we started this because we were continually being asked about how to provide music in primary schools, and of course our background and my background is teaching music in schools. I now had the privilege of being able to teach in 3 different schools, doing drums and percussion and whole class music in some scenarios, and it's been really interesting. I've had a chance to do more of that in recent weeks, which I was very lucky to actually get another job doing that when so many people are losing their jobs. It's been a real something I've really cherished in these last few months, and I think it's just that connection that I get to see on every child's face. It's with lots of one-to-one tuition, and it's that understanding, it's that learning development together, the journey of where we're going, understanding each other, myself obviously understanding each pupil, but them also understanding me and the conversations we have about the learning process. You know, the idea of being able to have a go, the idea of what your perception of failure is, and whether that's actually not getting it right, or understanding how the learning process works by repetition, by patience, by knowledge, by just having a go and doing it over. And the failure isn't in necessarily not playing what you're expecting to, but actually maybe not even having a go in the first place. And it's been really interesting building up more and more of a picture of that. And I think a lot of my job has actually been creating the environment to give them the understanding that they can just have a go, and that we can learn together, and we can have a breadth of understanding and knowledge, as well as just learning how to hit a drum. And that's been really fascinating to me, because that's really what this podcast is all about. Ideally, yes, we want to have an environment within our school that gives that same kind of clarity and safe place to play and learn at the same time. We hope that children have that in their home life as well, but we know that that's not necessarily the case in either of those situations. But I think the ultimate thing is that every child has the understanding that no matter what their circumstances are, they can find that support, whether it's in a teacher, whether it's a mentor, whether it's someone within their family, or actually it's just themselves. We're able to share here an entire back catalogue of episodes and resources and best practice and best advice, and advice our guests would give their younger selves, which just opens a door to a whole world of learning and understanding. And that personalised learning that you can get as a child, as a pupil, that you can impart as a teacher or parent to a child, means that they can take their learning forward. They can take ownership of what they want, and we can introduce them to the kind of people, the kind of support that they need to really take their life forward. Now, I talk quite a lot about community and bringing people together. And as I said, we have a Facebook group now, which is, I think, 40-something people strong, which means we're really gathering some speed in terms of the amount of people who want to be part of all of this. But we also had some not so successful things this year. I started to create a Patreon account where it just had an idea of a kind of a membership kind of model, a way of bringing people in a shared vision, and it didn't really take off. And so we decided to change that. And that's a really interesting thing for me in terms of sort of trying something new, trying to find ways to bring people together to kind of support this journey that we're on. Now, of course, the podcast takes a lot of time, and also there's a financial implication of producing this in terms of the ongoing costs and the equipment that we need, like I said, as well as the time, which obviously has an impact on my earning capacity as a teacher. And of course, we've also been through this pandemic, which means that all of my professional performing work has actually stopped since March. We've not had a gig or a concert or a performance since then, which is just incredible. It's the longest I've ever gone without having the opportunity to perform. It's really, really strange times, not just difficult times, but just kind of a different way of working, a different way of understanding, needing a different way to be able to produce what's going on. And I want a big thank you to the National Association for Primary Education again for their continued and long-term support as a sponsor of this show. And it's really shown me that with the right kind of people wanting to support what you do, it really is possible to grow something like this. And we now have the opportunity for more sponsors to come on board. So if you're within a company, an organisation, or you want to just have your name connected with the sorts of things that we're producing here, please do feel free to get in touch and we can talk about that. Now, the other project we put together during the latter part of this year was the Gofundme campaign, because what I wanted to do is to bring some of these resources and the stories and the advice that we talk about on the podcast and actually create it into a book that we can gift children as maybe it's they're leaving primary school, going into secondary school, or maybe slightly older, but have that opportunity for them to have all of this in something like a resource that's just literally on their bedstand or just within their knowledge and their framework of understanding of what's possible and how they can be supported through Education on Fire. Now, my original aim was to have the funding in place by now, the end of 2020, but that's not been the situation, and I want to thank everybody who has donated so far. It's been a real sort of shot in the arm of support for those that have, so thank you very much. But we're still going to carry on that campaign, and as soon as we have the funding in place, because this is going to be a self-published book, we have all the editing, all the writing, and all the costs associated with actually obviously getting something like this into the hands of children, then I'm excited about what that possibility is. But in the meantime, before we get to the chance of actually being able to produce this, I'm going to be adding very short videos along the same lines of content onto my YouTube channel. And on the YouTube channel, we're going to be sharing some of this content in very short videos. And so if you have a child that you think would benefit from this, you can point them in that direction. So the podcast, we have all this support for teachers and parents and people who are supporting children. But I want the YouTube channel to be much more kind of me talking to young people, to adolescents, to be able to say, look, this is the sort of thing that we've been talking about on the podcast. Here are the quick takeaways. I hope this is going to be really useful and it gives you something that you need. And then if they want to then go and listen to the podcast, listen to the audio in much more depth, then they can do that. And I think having that is something which we can do as part of the Education on Fire brand, if you like, or the overall kind of feeling and community of what Education on Fire is. I think that's going to affect as many people as we possibly can. So that's also on the agenda, using everything that we're doing and just repurposing it in such a way that we can support as many people as we possibly can. So again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your continued interaction. I love receiving your emails and your comments and shares on social media. It really does really help spread the word. And if you've had the opportunity to leave a review on iTunes or one of the platforms where you listen to the podcast, then thank you. If you haven't done that before, then it's always a great thing to be able to do to help the algorithms in the background, help push the podcast further up into more people's understanding and their frame of reference. So yeah, please do leave a review if you possibly can. A brilliant thing for us in terms of our reach and the people seeing the podcast who haven't maybe come across it before. So I hope you have a great year. Thank you to all the guests that have been on for 2020. We have some fantastic interviews already lined up, taking us well into 2021. And we'll be continuing to add some of our bonus episodes that we were releasing, which were previously done on Learning on Fire, and just share as much fantastic information and fantastic content as we possibly can, with the idea obviously of sharing creative, inspiring learning with as many people as we can from around the world. So just remember, education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire. And that's your fire that you're then giving to the children in your life. Thank you so much for being here. And here's to a very, very exciting 2021. Thanks for listening to the Education on Fire podcast. For more information of each episode and to get in touch, go to educationonfire.com. Education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire.